Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. The fit for this video is Jurassic Park. Clever girl. Let's take a look at a video.
Yo, this is true? This is crazy.
All right, let's see it.
What's interesting is if you go back to the original Hebrew that the Old Testament was written in, there's more than one word for sin. There's something used called iniquity. There's something that's translated transgression.
Another way of saying this would be to say that the Hebrew Bible has different words that refer to different concepts, and as Christians we impose this reduction of all these different concepts to our Christian notion of sin and just use that one word to translate their different words.
The word iniquity is really interesting because in the original Hebrew, it breaks up into these three letters, a vav, a bet, and a nun.
There's absolutely no such word in Hebrew. This creator means avon, which is ayin vav nun. There's no bet involved anywhere in it, and that means a misdeed or iniquity.
Vav is an eye being opened. Bet is a fish hook or a hook, and then a nun is the idea of like multiplying or fish multiplying.
So this creator does not have the first clue what they're talking about. They obviously cannot read Hebrew. They're misidentifying the letters that spell the word avon. They're misrepresenting the acrophonic nature of the Hebrew script. They are even misrepresenting the pictographs from which the Hebrew script descends. To begin, the Hebrew script is an acrophonic one. What that means is that each character represents a sound, and that sound is whatever sound begins the word that is attached to the image from which the script's character descends. It's a little confusing, but think of the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, beit. This character represents the sound b, just like the letter B in the Latin script. Now, this does not represent the sound B just arbitrarily. It represents the sound B because the character, before it was part of the Hebrew alphabetic script, came from Egyptian hieroglyphs, where it could function pictographically. And when it was in the Egyptian script, the pictograph that character represented was a house. And when Semitic peoples adopted Egyptian hieroglyphs to use alphabetically, that image of a house became this character, and it went from representing the concept of a house to representing the sound that begins the word for house in the Semitic language, which is bait. So we go from Egyptian hieroglyph to alphabetic script. We go from the word house to the sound b, and the word is bite. So by the time we get to Hebrew, we have lost the pictographic associations. Now, they are picked back up in later mystical traditions, but all that is post-biblical. During the period of the writing of the Hebrew Bible, this is a purely acrophonic script. Each letter just represents a sound. So the word avon has an ayin, a vav, and a nun, and the character ayin does descend from a hieroglyph that represents an eye. This creator misidentifies it, however, as a vav. It's not, it's an ayin, and the sound that is associated with is somewhere between a voice pharyngeal fricative and a pharyngalized glottal stop or something like that. It's pronounced differently depending on the language and the region and the time period. The second letter is a vav, which this creator says is a fish hook, which is closer. It's not a fish hook, it's just a hook for hanging curtains, a peg or something like that. The third letter is the nun, which has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with multiplying. That's just made up. The nun descends from an Egyptian hieroglyph that represents one of two different styles of snake. Nachash is the Hebrew word for snake. And so that begins with the sound n, which is the nun, which is the n quality consonant. So none of this is accurate, none of this is how Hebrew works, and this creator can't even identify the characters correctly.
And so the word iniquity really pictorially means whatever your eye hooks into will multiply in your life.
So biblical Hebrew never functioned anywhere near this way, anywhere near the periods of the composition of the Hebrew Bible. This is a thoroughly post-biblical set of frameworks that are being imposed upon the text in order to generate new and more interesting meaning with the text. And this creator is not good at it. They clearly can't even identify the Hebrew characters. They can't identify the pictographs from which these characters descended. They're just making stuff up to make it sound like there's all this cool and interesting stuff for Christians in the biblical Hebrew words that we now translate as sin.